Good morning, happy Wednesday. Welcome to Live with Liz. Gosh, I didn't hear my intro. Can anybody out there hear me? Because I think I might be having an audio problem. Live issues, wouldn't you know it? Let's see. This might be something we restart today. Isn't that exciting? Everybody maybe needs to go get another cup of coffee so we can restart. Let's see. Hey, Mariana, can you hear me? Are you able to hear me? It's a little strange because I don't hear sound. Oh, awesome. Okay. Glad to know. Thanks for confirming that. Okay, so if you already got your cup of coffee, I guess stick around. We're going to talk about websites for your law firm today. Live with Liz, if you're new here, is a 15-minute weekly chat where we take a quick dive into all things that are legal marketing and business development. So today on websites, we're talking specifically about websites for law firms. And I'm speaking especially to those of you out there who have the basic of the basics for your law firm website, or have a website that's 10 years old that you're absolutely in love with and haven't changed. And the reason that we're talking about websites, especially in this moment as we're still in pandemic, is because there are some things that have cropped up that are specific to law firms that I have noticed quite frequently are not being addressed by certain sectors, and maybe some people just don't know about it. I often work with international business-to-business law firms, and there are some things in the United States that are trending that maybe you just haven't heard of yet. So we kind of did this tongue-in-cheek, does your law firm have a soul kind of thing. It was kind of meant to be a joke, but took another direction. Really, your website is a reflection of who you are. So if you are, or maybe even an extension of your office in a time like now when people aren't visiting your office and when we're not having these frequent in-person meetings, you have a chance to actually project an even better image of who you are and what services you provide just by having a shiny, beautiful website. Now, a lot of people get bogged down in these projects and say they have to invest a certain amount in the project, have it start and finish, and say, okay, we're going to do a new website project, set a committee, have these things. It's always going to take longer than you think. It's always going to cost more money than you think, but it doesn't have to be a ton of money, and it doesn't have to be something that starts and finishes. I like to say that websites are alive, and this is something that you never finish. It's a continuous improvement project. They're dynamic, they evolve with you, and you really need to take advantage of the way that you can communicate with people by having that front door online, and that's what your website is. Your website needs to cover the basics, which most people already know, but let's run down if you have been out of sight or out of mind, or are really considering updating your website or getting a new one altogether and starting over, maybe even reinventing yourself online. The basics come down to design, the aesthetics of your website, translating your persona online and making it something that people can connect with. So design and aesthetics are super important. Modern and sleek are the way people are going. And there are some interesting things that I'm seeing with design lately that are really drawing people in and helping them navigate to the services and the solutions that you are trying to push them toward. One of the things that we're seeing that is interesting is the elimination by some of the navigation bar, the traditional menu at the top or at the side of your website that indicates links to different things that you're trying to share online. Instead, they're very focused into how to get people to actually communicate with you in a more simple and streamlined way. And I'm finding these to be absolutely fascinating and functional. So this is something that if you're thinking of doing something new, maybe consider what that means. And maybe it won't be a complete elimination of a menu for a law firm. There are still certain considerations that you have and things that you have to share, but it is something interesting to think about. So design and aesthetic aside, the basics that you need to cover are load time. If you haven't optimized for that, it is absolutely critical. People will leave your website after 2 to 3 seconds if it doesn't load. And I'm sure you all can relate. If you're on your phone and you're going to a website and it doesn't load fast enough, it is off with that screen and on to the next TikTok video, because who has time for that? Nobody. The things that you can do to make load time easy are to make sure that the images on your website are of the proper size that load quickly, check your videos, check your plugins. There are a whole list of optimization things that you can do to your website to make the load time faster. That's not really our focus today, but it's out there and I wanted to make sure to bring it up. So, of course, you need to have your basic contact information in your communications, but a lot of things that are missing from law firm websites, or often missing from law firm websites, are those calls to action and your lead magnets that are there, your capture forms. So people have the option to maybe contact you, maybe they can send you an email through a quick form, but you're not really doing anything to reach out to people and really in a meaningful way, the targeted people, to have them contact you for specific reasons and to meet with you regarding the services that you provide with a lead magnet, something very specific to what they're looking for on those pages that offer the right services. So instead of just having that contact us button with an email form or your email address, you can actually take advantage of some of the ways that you're offering your services to get people to reach out to you with very specific questions that lead to the services you provide. If you're a patent practitioner and you have written something relevant to a specific industry, or maybe just a claims process, or you're answering the most common questions that you get, but it's still kind of confusing people, you can create a lead form within that specific content that gets people to contact you for that specific reason without making the just standard contact email. I mean, of course you need to have that too, don't get me wrong, but you can take it a step further and use it for business development in a way that maybe you haven't thought of before, or that you're just not taking advantage of. A lot of times a foreign firm will come to me, especially for US business development, and say, I'm trying to get a meeting with a corporate and I'm not really getting in the door with a lot of these. And I'll take a look at their website and it'll be dated. You can tell the copyright notice hasn't been updated. Maybe they're missing some of the basics like terms and conditions or a privacy policy or something very basic. Or maybe just the look and feel is not resonating with me. It's just kind of dull and boring, which a lot of law firms are dull and boring, but you don't have to be online. There's the beauty in it. The people who are going to meet with you potentially in the United States, they will look at your website before the meeting, or people who work for them, like their paralegals and assistants and people who prepare them for the meeting will look at your website. And so even though it may seem like it's not the top priority for you in terms of your business development plan, it needs to be clean and polished, even when you're considering those meetings and finding people, connecting with them offline. That is something that is really important. Now, there is something else that is more and more popular and happening, at least in the United States. We're seeing law firms include their diversity and equity statements, DEI, diversity and inclusion statements. And that is something that I'm finding missing still from a lot of foreign firms. If you have not included some sort of a statement on your stance with DEI, this is the time to do it. Really think about where you stand on it, include that statement, because it will allow you to be considered for things that maybe you wouldn't have been considered before. Also, maybe it resonates with you as the personality of your firm and things like that. And it's just part of SEO now and people searching for you. And hot tip, it might be something that the rankings professionals are considering. So having that DEI statement is definitely a sign of having a modern and updated take on the world and a clean, modern, updated website. There are two major considerations for law firms that a lot of other types of companies don't have to consider. A lot of businesses, maybe they do it for some things, but one are your bar rules. So if you're having a marketing company do your website and it's not a legal marketing company, or if you're having your marketers at your own firm, or even if you're just tackling it yourself, remember to check your bar rules, because this is something that you might just miss in terms of what disclaimers might be required by your local bar, by your state bar, whatever bar you might be a member of. The advertising and communication rules they probably exist and you may not be in compliance with them. There is certain language that might be prohibited. There are certain notices that you might have to have on your website to be in compliance with your ethics or your bar rules. And that is something that is missed and that law firms have no choice. You really have to take ownership of that. Ultimately, the lawyers are responsible for what is on their website. And so this is not something that you just want to leave to the marketers to say, you know, of course they can make it beautiful, but if they accidentally slip and say something that is not in compliance, you could be held responsible, or it might just make you look bad. It is a good practice to be in compliance with your bar rules. And the other thing, the number 2, that is really important for a law firm that may not be as top of mind or an important priority for non-law firms is ADA compliance. While there may not be an official definition out there for what that means. Oh, let me define ADA. That's a good question. Thank you for asking. So ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so this is something that is US centric, but also good for humanity, right? So when we're talking about ADA compliance for a website, we're talking about making it more accessible for those people who maybe have some disabilities or are less capable of certain comprehension when it comes to maybe the visual aspects of your website. Maybe someone needs some audio. And the ways to become ADA compliant, so to speak, or to offer some sort of ADA compliance in your website, there are a couple of ways. You can do it on your own with your marketers or your SEO people by adding, it's as simple as adding alt text to some of your images to allow for people who maybe are hard of hearing. You might change something with your fonts. You might have somebody who is utilizing a reader who reads out loud the content from your website. So if they're reading out loud the content of your website, you want your images to say something to those people. And there's a lot of work that goes into that. It's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, but it's worth it in the long run to be ADA compliant. There is also a simpler way that may not be as daunting for a law firm, and it doesn't take, you know, a mountain to move for you to have this happen and be more accessible. And be more accessible, it's kind of a pun, because there are plugins that you can get for your website or tools that you can subscribe to. And there are 2 that I'm familiar with that I'm sure there are many more out there. I don't have a relationship with them, but just to give you an idea, there's one called Accessibe. I might be pronouncing that wrong, but it's ACCESSIBE.com. So I'm calling it Accessibe, and they have a subscription model that will go through your website and do all of this for you. There's another one called Max Access that I've seen. I know that there are a few more out there, but those are the top 2 that came to mind. And those will automate this process for you. So you don't even have to worry about your marketers learning something new. And as a law firm, setting that example and making sure that you're as accessible to all of the people who may be reaching out to you is a good thing. And also can speak to who you are as somebody, especially if you're a firm that is trying to emphasize your DEI. This is a part of that inclusion, and it's not that difficult to make it happen. So that's those 2, the ADA compliance and the bar rules, I think are more important for law firms than maybe for the general public. I know that there have been some lawsuits related to the ADA and websites, and that may be something that is of interest to a law firm over some other types of companies. I'm not aware of any specific requirement for ADA compliance. It is just a good policy at this point, and it is encouraged. But check your bar rules, because you may have to have ADA compliance in certain circumstances or in certain states. And that is something that, you know, as lawyers, you need to know. And of course, your marketers probably don't. And if you have any questions about your website, the functionality, the modernity, like if it's something up to date, if it's something accessible, if you are looking to refresh, we would love it. Oh, that's a great question. Kumar is asking, what are the tools for inbound lead generation? So there are a lot of plugins out there that you can get to help with this, but you basically, if you have a CRM that can integrate with your website, that is maybe one of the easiest ways to go. So your CRM, your client resource management or your customer resource management, is what keeps track of people who are coming to you. We also at Firm Forward have another tool that looks at people who are visiting your website and actually identifies those companies, as opposed to just giving you general statistics or analytics about the visitors and who's coming in terms of like their origination. But it actually tells you if there's a corporate identified with that IP address, it'll tell you the name of the company. And so for law firms that are especially reaching out B2B, that kind of a tool can be very useful. And so this is something that if you want more information on it, please contact me and I will let you know what that looks like. And for just general lead captive forms, you can create those with basic plugins, but I would choose one that's tied to your CRM. So a lot of the CRMs that are out there, I mean, we've got a whole Live with list that covers CRMs, but you know, a lot of people are using, the top two are Salesforce and Dynamics, which have a lot of forms that you can use right on your website. But there are some other ones that are very specific to law firms. And then there are even a few out there that like Zoho CRM, for example, very accessible products that can help capture the information of people visiting you, trying to contact you. And they're basically just forms. You can even have them done manually by your developers. So there are tools. I would say CRM Route is great because it integrates, and then something that is analytics like the one that I'm talking about that we offer that helps identify those people to get them into a business development pipeline for you. That's the kind of tool that we're talking about for lead generation on your website. Of course, you can do digital advertising and SEO as well, but that's taking it a little bit further. And there are all sorts of things. There's even this little thing, it's called a pixel. Isn't that cute? When you hear pixel, you might think of pictures, but they're tracking tools that you can get to figure out who's visiting your website and get even more analytics from different places. So like Facebook, you could have a little pixel on your website to track it. Yeah, so thank you for joining me with Live with List this week. We went a little bit over, but websites are super important, and hopefully I've brought something to your attention that maybe you didn't think about before. If you're looking for a new website, if you have questions, you can always reach out to us, solutions@firmforward.com. We look forward to speaking with you soon, and we're going to have some exciting announcements about updates to our own website coming up soon. So take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your week, and hopefully I'll see you next time on Live with Liz. Bye, everybody.